Welcome to Brightly, you radiant being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. This season, we're embarking on a journey of personal growth and reflection as we explore the depths of the human experience. We'll use our good and bad experiences, friendship, and passions to inspire thought provoking conversation and soul driven advice to better help you create a life worth living and step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Well, hello, stranger.
Hello. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've said all that. I forgot what it was this season. I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, that's what we're doing? Cool. I'm excited. Let's go. How have you been?
Oh gosh, I feel like I don't know what I feel like. It's been well, I look, this is great. It's wonderful that we were able to do this. We got new windows. What a privilege. And they're beautiful. Now, to be fair, the windows were original from when Rick built this house in the 80s.
Wow.
So we really, really, really needed them.
You've been
But
embarking on a home improvement journey
yeah,
this weekend.
but if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a lamp on the floor, and like these things over here used to be shelves. So there's still a lot of things um not in place, out of order, a little tight, not a huge amount of chaos because I've got it pretty well situated, but it kind of feels like my life, like things not quite in order where they should be, little bit of chaos. I'm just not sure. How about you?
Well, no, let's stay with you.
Yeah.
I love that you use the word chaos or a little bit of chaos. I wonder if there is a tinier word for chaos that would have that same impact without the adjective. But although not the reason or the cause or the inspiration for the hiatus, you have been busy during this time, right? Like you have just, your day to day life has just been full.
Yeah, and my, the job that I have has been extremely busy to the point where um I get home or I'm done with the day and I'm done. Like literally and figuratively, I'm done. And then I'm also volunteering. So I volunteer every Tuesday night for a program at the library with two young kids, and that in I don't know what I was thinking. Like I really wanted to volunteer and I'm so happy I did it. It's a wonderful program and it's very rewarding. But there are times I'm like, why did you think you would have like the stamina to work all day and then volunteer 2.5 hours,
But I
sometimes
mean,
three?
isn't that like, because it seems like, oh, it's one night a week. That's not that
Mhm.
much and for a short period of time, but it doesn't take much to throw off the equilibrium of your rituals and your routines and your energy. And you're someone who I imagine wants to give your all to everything you're doing, right? And so you're giving your all in your 9 to 5, or probably more apt, your 7 to 6. And then you're now also volunteering and you're a wife and a mom and a grandma and a friend, right? Like you just expanded all these roles you took on. And so I'm glad you're able to take a break from being a podcaster for a bit. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It was one less thing on my plate. However, even though it is a an enjoyable thing on my plate, there's still energy put into it,
mhm.
right? Um, yeah. So now can we talk about you?
Oh, I suppose. Thank you for asking. So I've been on an expedition of grief. And I had two losses. I was gonna say February, but it was on leap day, so I don't know if that counts as February. But March had two major deaths for me in my life. One being my grandma Betty, who I've spoke about in a couple past episodes. the one who recently, when she first ended up in the hospital in January, and I asked her, "Oh, what are your hopes and dreams for me? Should I ever get married?" And it was to don't. So if you
Yeah.
remember those stories,
Yeah.
sadly, she ended up in the hospital again, and she passed away on Leap Day, which is such a baller epitaph to have in life, something that only people who pass every 4 years can claim. But she passed away at just prior to her 91st birthday. And so although expected, and although I got the blessing to be able to sit with her for her last 3 days as she passed and at least say my goodbyes to her, it was still really hard, to have a loss. And then experience this is the younger generation of my family, my nieces and nephews, her great grandchildren. This is some of their first experiences with firsthand loss, or at least being at an age where they really recognize what death is and losses and are a part of the grief. They got to come and say goodbye and attend her memorial service and interment of ashes and all that. And so even when I felt I was at a good place with it after a few weeks when we held the celebration of life on what would have been her 91st birthday, seeing how it affects them and then my grandma's children, so my father and my uncle, just brought a whole new level and stage of grief and loss. And then during all that time, as you know, I had to bid farewell to my companion, my pet, my cat, IKEA. I had her for just over 17 years. And part of this, navigation of loss has also been feeling guilty at feeling more impacted by that than the death of my grandma. Not that it's a competition, but one, has definitely, has been a daily imprint on my life for 17 years.
That's
Um,
right.
and the other, it's probably been 17 to 20 years since that she had a daily impact on my life. And so both were largely hugely influential and supportive in my life. And um, to be going through those back to back. I know we've tried to record a few times or try to set it up, but this brain has been empty. I haven't had many thoughts to think, let alone say or share or explore. Um,
When we're going through things like that, I think it's important. You said my brain is empty, and I truly believe that there are times when you do just have to uh, just be nothing almost. It's sort of like that well. And and when you first said I've been on an expedition of grief, that just struck. That really struck because that's exactly what it is. Because you never know what's coming up. Um, you sometimes are searching for things. It's just it's a perfect term for that. I'm not getting my point across the way I want to when you said, my brain is empty. It just feels like that's how it should be if you're actively grieving.
and that's where I love that actively grieving. Everybody grieves differently, which I mean, we have a past episode on grief that you produced, I think, kind of more around the loss of your mom. And you know, to compare losing a pet to a person and a grandparent, right? Like grief is nobody can compare a loss, right? And so it's so
No.
challenging to talk about with others and to really feel heard. And so um I like that the expedition part of it, right? Because everybody's kind of on their own, right? So
Yeah.
and it's going to be a different experience for all. And I just during all this time, all I can also feel is immense gratitude that I had the benefit to actively grieve. And that based on all the healing and the work and awareness I've done before this, I made sure that I did. I didn't run from it. Um,
Mm.
when I got the call about my grandmother, I was forewarned by my sister that this was it and that she knows we've had these experiences a lot before, but that we're actively having those conversations, or she was with the doctor at the time and to prepare. So I got to spend 3 days by her side. My boss let me. I'm very blessed that I have the type of job that I do, that I can just do that. I know not everybody can, and everybody's work can uh, support that, or can deal with the loss of a staff member. And so I had a hard time being too upset when I got this. I really wanted to use the time that I had and to sit and be present and not be at a laptop while at her bedside, right? Or not have to be working during the day and wondering, what the phone call would be. And then I got the impression from my family members that they appreciated not having to be bedside, but knowing that someone was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when she did pass, it was at 3:33 in the morning on leap day. And when I reached out to my boss, I was like, okay, I'll be on later. And he's like, no, you won't. He's like, take the day. Take the And I was like, no, but I've been gone all week, and and he's like, take the day. And so I'm so appreciative of him. And then to have then the following week I was in DC for work. I had a training.
Right.
So within 5 days of my grandma passing, I was on a plane, and just before I left, there were some telltale signs in my pet. So I asked the people who were watching her to kind of keep an eye out for it. So I knew when I was coming home Saturday, it wasn't coming home to um, a pet in the best of health. And um, after taking her to the vet on over the weekend once I got home, and then on Monday, upon realizing those interventions weren't working and this was time, again, my boss was like, take the time that you need. And so I was able to spend her last 24 hours with her and just laying. And so this journey of grief has been so interesting, because with both, I started with acceptance, and not a false acceptance, but like I got to say goodbye. I got a chance to try medical interventions with my pet. I got a chance to throw money at it, right? Like I got a chance to really be present in it. And I know grief isn't linear, but to start at acceptance, and then a week later experience all the other ones has been so interesting. um and so yeah, it's just, both were expected due to age, but also very sudden. And so
Yeah.
I've
Mhm.
appreciated this break. And um it's been such a reflection also of the love I had and support I have in my life. And like, even between the loss of my grandma and the loss of my pet, support from people, colleagues at work, from you, from family, from my other friends, right? And so just to get to kind of be held in this time, when I think if this would have happened 5, 10, 20 years ago, how different that would have been. And so I'm just appreciative of the life I've built and maintained so far, that even this loss doesn't feel
Yeah.
like I can't get through it. So that was a lot.
Yeah. Well, because that was a lot. That, right?
Fair
It
point.
was a lot because it was a lot. Yeah. And that's absolutely that's the other thing that we just have to remember. Like, yeah, I know you and I are always like, feel your feelings, but also no, really give yourself the time in order to be able to feel your feelings, because sometimes you don't feel things right away when something traumatic or something that could induce grief happens. Sometimes you just don't, and it takes a while. And so I think really happy that you were able to have the time.
Yeah, and not to make this an episode about grief, but I just, of my two sisters, just seeing the differences in our life, and just kind of going back to the advice my grandma gave me, and kind of what I've been really embracing, the past year or so. And I think I've shared a lot of this on the podcast, but just like my singledom, and really acknowledging that I am kind of happy and at peace with my solitude, as lonely as it can get at times, and that it really afforded me an opportunity to grieve. That when my little sister, little, I say little, she's in her 30s with 4 kids, but when my youngest sister heard the news about my grandma, she was nursing her newborn baby, and
Mhm.
had toddlers running around, and was gonna have to tell a 10-year-old. And my older sister is in a job where she is much more essential, and couldn't really take the time off, but she was also the power of attorney, and responsible for what happens next and planning memorials and things. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of a privilege. You better feel your feelings and not carry this with you.
Yeah,
Not everybody gets this opportunity of, you know, solace or being able to reach out to friends and be able to meet their needs as they need to be met. That they had to, I would imagine, put their needs on the back burner and to help others.
absolutely. And that is part of also why you don't necessarily grieve the way that
Exactly.
completely, it's like an incomplete grief, right?
Yes.
Because it's shut down. Or you, like you said, you put it on the back burner because you have all these people with needs
Mm-hmm.
who live with you. Yeah.
But I mean, as much as I just said, my brain was empty. It's been very reflective, I guess, right? And so it also gave me an opportunity to think about this show, right? And taking a break. This is our what, 135th episode. Um,
Yes, ma'am.
and so I think I say this at the end of every year, but we've done 134 episodes of a podcast, Amy. And it just it changed my perspective because at first we did try to record an episode and thankfully had technological difficulties that stopped us
Hmm.
right in the middle of recording and didn't save it. And it it allowed me to just like see how much we've accomplished and that it's okay to take a break and will probably better inform us as hosts of a podcast and help us make decisions on what we want this to be moving forward. I don't know, you've had a lot of chaos. Did you reflect on the podcast at all?
I think I went back and forth. Like there were times that I reflected on it a little bit, but I also felt like it felt as if I needed you to be there
Mm.
in a way. So no, not really. Sorry. Because
I wasn't
yeah,
there. I apologize.
no, no, I think that hmm, I'm not getting my point across. I
That's
don't
okay.
know.
um on the day my grandma was admitted to the hospital around like 8 or 9 o'clock that night, I was the only one sitting with my grandma and my two sisters and their daughters came. So it was the whole female family line,
Yeah.
just sitting around my grandma. And I just got a chance to reflect on like the power of women in that moment. We had a male nurse at the time, and he walked in and was just kind of like, "Oh," just like the power of it. You have three women in their mid 30s to early 40s, 11-year-old and a newborn baby, brand new to the world by like not even a week old, I don't think. Just sitting around a nearly 91-year-old woman, right? And just like this lineage she got to do. And so that was not only a memorable moment for me, but we've talked about future episodes doing, episodes on like the concepts of lady communes and what life is like as a crone, or just how to support each other and women moving forward. And so I think that'll be really fun as we move on this year, carry on.
I not only do I want to talk about lady communes, I want to build one.
Exactly. um and so it again, with all the loss that I had, just seeing how everybody, but especially the women in my life, like reached out and banded together. And I think the second week of grief was the hardest for me because I didn't have anything lined up, and that first week was so easy to get through because I just had like uh all my female friends and family really flocked to me and supported me and checked in on me. And so, yeah, same. I was like, oh, I want that all the time, not just at like major celebrations or major losses, right? I want that lady
Yeah,
commune effort all the
yeah,
time. So, hopefully, we can use Brightly to kind of build that, for other people who want that too, who listen.
yeah, yeah. I love that because it doesn't have to be a actual commune, right? It can be the idea of it
A
or
community.
right. Well,
Commune's
Right.
just fun to say.
It is, especially with the word term lady in front of it. I don't know why. I always think it's my lady jam.
Your lady jam. What is your lady jam?
No, isn't that from Pitch Perfect?
Oh, sure. I don't
I don't
know.
know. I don't know either. I I'm gonna apologize to anyone listening or watching. I think I'm really tired.
You are really tired. Well,
And yeah, and my brain seems to be kind of slow motion brain right now.
well, it
Mm,
makes sense because it's been what, 2 months since we've recorded or posted, right? So that we last met in
yeah,
February. It's been over
yeah,
1,200 days since our first episode when we introduced ourselves in depth. And then
1,200 days.
our return also happens to be the day of the April 8th, 2024 eclipse.
Yeah.
Spring has just started. Aries season just started, which kicks off a new astrological year, and Mercury's in the refrigerator. And so you feeling that way is it's such a physical representation of like the cosmos and how the energies of the world are feeling right now, I feel like.
Yeah.
Um I don't know what show this comes from, but I remember there was one show where they call it like the primordial soup
Yeah.
that is just kind of and how it's just kind of affecting everyone. So maybe what we can do with like our last, 15 minutes here is just kind of explore who we are, like a Q&A kind of ping back session, right? We haven't done that in a while. We've tried to just be conversational, but
Yeah.
if the conversation isn't there, maybe we just need a little help. And then this way, people who are listening, you can pause and answer for yourself as well. What do you think?
No, I love that. In fact, I always want people, if we have questions for each other and we're asking each other these things, it's in my brain, I'm always thinking, I hope that you're asking yourself those questions,
I love it.
listener. So, yeah. All right, let's go.
Okay, well, how has your view of yourself evolved since we started the podcast? So sorry, listener. How about since you started listening to the podcast? Maybe it hasn't been 1,200 days for you.
Or, since when did we first, was it 2020 or 2021?
December 20th, 2020.
Okay, so how has your view of yourself evolved since the end of 2020?
Yeah.
Am I answering?
Oh, you're repeating it back to me. So for me, I feel like this experience, both through just regular conversations with my dear friend Amy, but then also the topics we explore, and that
Yeah.
uh, we've always approached this as like sharing what we're learning, not that we're the experts, right? And so it's been like a conversation on our experiences and a sharing of resources. And so I just feel like I have a better mirror of myself. I tend to see the details of my life and be hard on myself for what am or am not doing in like these small moments. Whereas you've been a great like look at your life, look at your choices, look at the big picture, look at all you've done in 4 years, right? Like every year, whenever I've said that or whatnot, you've been like, didn't you do this, this, and this? And I'm like, well, yeah, but that was months ago. And you're like, that was September. Like, so, or even just like some of the questions and the topics. So I appreciate having that mirror and that reflection to carry forward and not to be the only voice in my head.
Yeah. I think, well, first of all, the end of 2020, the way I changed from the beginning of 2020 to the end of 2020 was enormous. But then when I think about when we started this podcast and how we never wanted to come across as experts, I think that when we started it, I think I felt like I was like doing pretty good. Like I was nearly like I could be teaching people
I've
things.
achieved.
I was like, yeah, I'm thinking like, hey, you're doing great. And now I'm like, oh no, you don't know shit.
You started doing
Like,
shadow work.
right? Yeah, yeah.
I
So
don't know.
so it's like the more I think we've said this before on the podcast, like, oh, hey, you want to like have some personal development? You want to do that? Start a podcast because then you're like, oh, I guess I do
Let's
this
shine that
thing.
light in that corner.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, oh, I have so much growth that needs to happen. And yes, I did grow, but I grew in the way of like you said, the shadow work. I grew in the way of like absolutely recognizing maybe faults or things that are triggering or things how I react to certain things. So yeah, I think the rose colored glasses are off. Is what
I
I'd like to
I don't know. I'm gonna hold up a mirror. You can call it rose colored if you like. I still think you have so much wisdom and experience and successes to share, though, right? And like what like compared to like the red pill male podcasters who I don't feel like are growing through having a podcast. I think that's what I appreciate about your vulnerability was still willing to, hit record and put this forth out to the world is you're like, I'm still figuring it out. Or like, I thought I knew this, but now I know this. And tomorrow I'm probably going to know something else. But that that the journey can still help inspire other people or uh,
we're
give
never
someone something to
done,
relate to.
right?
Yeah.
We're never done. And I think that that's important. I think it should be embraced. Like, hey, that's an opportunity. It's wonderful that we're never done.
I got into a conversation with ChatGPT just before the show. I saw something on TikTok and I asked it to tell me about it. And then I was like, well, what do you mean spiritual growth? Flush that out. And then it defined it. And I was like, what do you mean the next stage? Because like it went through all these areas of spiritual growth, and they're like, but then it continues on into the next stages, and it was like, what? Like, what do you mean? It doesn't stop. These are just the stairway to heaven, just goes up and up and up. And so it doesn't end, and it's important to recognize like what you achieve within the stages, but to make sure that you
Yeah,
keep going and stretching yourself as much as you can without doing something that'll cause you to fall back, right? Still having that awareness and being kind to yourself and being okay with where you're at, not pushing too hard.
yeah, yeah.
Well, what personal growth experiences have shaped you during the hiatus? So, the past 2 months, have you had any growth?
This was I this was really hard because I'm like, are you kidding me? You haven't grown in any way? What's happening?
Well, we weren't recording. That makes sense now. Given your last
Tracy,
answer.
Tracy, that seriously does make sense because I think that when we're recording, we're reflecting on things as they happen in the moment. And sometimes even like going, oh, realizations in the moment. But I don't know. I'm trying to think last 2 months.
Can I
I
flip the
did,
coin?
yeah,
No,
flip
what
it.
did you did what?
Well, I was going to say I finally got back into a daily journal habit. So even though that might not be considered personal growth,
Yeah, it is.
it's getting back to journaling.
How long had
And
you been out of it?
I've been out. I lost my journal. I couldn't find my journal, and heaven forbid I just pick up a different notebook. But I've been really hard on myself because when my mom died, I
Mm.
found all these journals. Some were quarter filled, some were half filled, but like just like no rhyme or reason and all over the place. And so my goal lately has been like no unfinished journals. Like you take that journal from start to finish. And so I lost my journal and I can't find it. And I was like, no, you can't start another journal because you have to find that one to finish it. And then finally I was like, dude, you're okay. It's all
I
right.
it's so interesting to me which value trumped the other one in that moment, right?
Right?
Like,
Because I am a journaler, more of a journaler
yeah.
than my mom was. My mom was it was almost like diary type of thing. Like today I did this, and not like the journaling, like how you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling. Yes, there's still some, oh, hey, this happened, but then this is how I'm feeling about it. And I know that when I journal, I feel I don't know if the term better is right or not, but it feels like I'm having a little bit of control
Mm.
in my feelings and what's happening. And I journal and then I do like three gratitude things, right? So the fact that I dug my heels in to not do something that helps me is
And,
pretty weird.
having that rule, it makes sense. You don't want to be wasteful. And we talk a lot. We're similar in this nature. It must be the Sagittarius in us, right? Of not finishing what we've started, but it's usually because we're starting other things that light us up
Yes,
and we eventually do come back to it. And so at what point, are you anchoring or hiding or covering up your true inner self and your inner nature for like this idealized thing that is never going to be you and doesn't have to be, right? Like either way you're
right.
writing, who cares if it's in the same notebook or not. I do the same thing though. Amy, you remember last year my journal was running out and I couldn't find one of similar size and structure,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
so when I did, I bought 8. And I now have 8 empty journals so that as I run out, I won't do that, right? And
Yeah.
but will I remember when this journal is done that I have 8 waiting for me? And this is the first one I've started since that purchase.
And you know what's so funny is when I first started this thing that I called One Good Cup, and I would journal, I'd
I
have my cup
remember.
of coffee, and I just used a composition notebook.
Yeah.
And I feel like I need to just go back to a composition notebook. But my sister gifted me this beautiful journal, um, this cream colored with gold writing on it. It says, "If I had a French accent, I'd never shut up." And so, and so I finally just was like, okay, just start using this journal instead of, and I still haven't found my old journal. But, anyways, enough about journals. How about you?
Well, wait, I want to go back.
Personal
So
growth. Oh,
you were challenged, what have you done in the past 2 months? I don't think you always have to be striving for personal growth every day of every month. So I'm glad that we took this little break then for you, because it is something you can kind of OD on, and then not, breath versus width kind of a thing, like do you want to
yeah.
go deep or do you want to go far? And so if you haven't been super intentional with personal growth these past 2 months, how do you feel like what you have been doing is going to shape your personal growth moving forward?
That's a really good question. And I don't know if I can answer that, but I do
Yeah.
know that today I woke up with this whole idea of a reset, that I
Mm.
just need to really look at the rituals and habits and just different things that I'm doing, and I need to reset and really think about how I do want to move forward.
How funny. That's also my takeaway from the past few months. And
Really?
well, for me, my 40th birthday is in about 4 months.
Yeah.
And so these losses, I've been pretty open. I don't want to say I've struggled with depression. I live with it. It's an old friend. For my entire life, I've always had some form of depression, and I don't get sad with it, but I do get stationary. I get, kind of stuck, standstill. And the funny thing for me with grief, with sadness, is I don't want to stand still anymore. Like I'm still feeling my feelings and I want to be sad, but suddenly I can't be sad and have a sink full of dishes. I can't be sad and not and just lay around in sweats all day. I, have been doing more with
Wow.
my appearance. I can't be sad and not have a goal for the year. And I don't want to lose that momentum.
Yeah.
That not only that, but then also just the loss of that daily companion, that pet, it changes things in my life, right? And so what a great opportunity to continue to shake things up and change it. And so yeah, I'm
Yeah.
hoping,
Shake
I've
things up.
so yeah, that's I think reset might be our theme moving forward for season 4, because we were thinking, with this break, it was also we weren't feeling super attached to what we initially came up with for
Mhm.
season 4. So I like that reset. All right. Well, we only have, let's see, we have enough time for maybe one more question. Um,
Make it a good one.
was there anything that you saw that you really want to talk about?
Um, how do you envision the future version of yourself? And I
Mm,
know for you, it's hard to go too far in the
it
future. So
is.
how about like the 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 40-year-old?
I think I want to push myself and think of the next decade. I think I do
Really?
wanna, because I know even if I say it's concrete, it's still um flimsy, not flimsy, that's not the right word. It's still mutable in a sense, right? Like it can flow and
Yeah.
it can change because they know me. So a few years ago, so the gentleman who wrote What Color is Your Parachute, Richard Bowles, was a
Hmm.
very common book in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially as, people decide what college to go to, what major, what to do after college, kind of a thing. I found his very first publication, The Three Boxes of Life. And I don't have it in front of me, but essentially like the first box of life is like childhood and young adulthood, figuring out
Oh,
who you are.
sure. Hmm.
The second box is like family, professional career, where I'm at right now as someone approaching her 40s. And then the final box is like retirement. I think three boxes, even though, there's stuff that happens in each of the boxes. I think there's kind of four when I think about it. I think retirement is its own box, but I think there's a box between young adulthood and where I am now, where I'm more established in myself, in my career, in what I want to do. Just a different level of confidence, just a different level of opportunities. And,
Hmm.
you're never starting over, you're starting from experience. I think I'm kind of in that box. I think I want to figure out with intention what the next 20 years are. Because the past 20, there's been intention involved, but it's also been reactive to needs. I need a job. I need a house. I need a car, right? Like, I need. And then now that I have these things, well, now what do I want? I
I love
recently,
that.
there was a TikToker, and I thought I pasted it in here. Um, oh, here it is. Her name is Tally D, Talidee. She recently had something come up in my feed where she said, "You're not incompetent, you just don't like the shit that you're doing." And that really hit home for how I feel in my day-to-day work. And so I think I want to find something. I want to like the shit I'm doing and feel competent at the same time and explore what that could look like, while still paying my bills, et cetera, et cetera. How about you?
Well, I mean, that just blew it out of the water. I was like, oh yeah, one with nature. I'll be outside all the time,
I
blah,
love
blah,
it.
blah. But I do think that when I think about the future me, it's 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 still me, but it's just like
Just
just
off the hook,
just
next level.
loving the shit I do,
And
right?
loving the shit I do.
Loving the shit I do.
There's a
Well,
subset for season
yeah.
4.
Yeah.
Resetting so that we love the shit we do. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Well, if you also love that and this episode spoke to your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have some time, give us some love on your preferred platform with the rate, review, and subscribe. We will be back with a more regular scheduled program. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
and with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day.